Kim Tae-ho wiped the sweat from his forehead as he stared at the radar screen. The green dots blinked slowly in the darkness of space. His salvage ship New Seoul drifted quietly near the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Most salvage operators avoided this area, too far from civilization, too dangerous. But Tae-ho was not like most operators. The former colonial marine had been working alone for 3 years now. His scarred hands moved expertly over the control panel. The war had taken much from him. His left leg still ached on cold ship nights. His right shoulder never quite worked the same after the plasma burn, but the war had also given him skills. Skills that kept him alive in the dark spaces between stars. The distress beacon had been weak at first, just a whisper in the cosmic noise, but Tae-ho had good ears, good equipment. He had learned to listen for the sounds others missed. The beacon was old, very old. It spoke in frequencies that made his teeth ache. Computer, run a full spectrum. Analysis on beacon signal 447 alpha. Tae-ho said to the empty bridge. The ship's computer hummed for several seconds. Analysis complete. Signal origin is approximately 10.7 light hours distant. Frequency patterns do not match any known human or registered alien technology. Tae-ho leaned back in his pilot chair. Unknown technology meant two things: either huge profit or huge danger. Sometimes both. He had seen enough of the galaxy to know that finding something truly new was rare. Most derelicts were human ships. Lost traders, failed colony vessels, military wrecks from the Centauri conflicts, but this signal felt different. He set course for the beacon's location. The New Seoul was not a fast ship, but she was reliable. Tae-ho had rebuilt her engines himself, added military-grade shields from his old marine contacts, modified her sensors with black market upgrades. She might not win any races, but she could handle whatever space threw at her. The journey took 6 hours. Tae-ho spent the time checking his equipment. His salvage suit was in good condition. The magnetic boots worked properly. His plasma cutter had a full charge. His sidearm was clean and loaded. Old habits from his military days. Always be prepared. When the New Seoul dropped out of transit drive, Tae-ho's breath caught in his throat. The ship floating before him was massive, easily 3 times larger than his own vessel, but size was not what made him stare. The hull was covered in patterns, geometric shapes that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them, lines and curves that hurt his eyes if he focused too long. Computer, scan the derelict. Full analysis, scanning commenced. Hull composition unknown. Metallic structure with crystalline inclusions, age estimate. Processing ... estimated age exceeds 10,000 years. No life signs detected. Minimal power readings from central sections. 10,000 years. Tae-ho had never seen anything that old. The oldest human ships were maybe 2 centuries. Even the ancient vegan ruins were only 3,000 years old. This ship had been drifting in space since before humans had learned to make fire. The patterns on the hull seemed to pulse with a faint light. Not quite visible, but there. Like looking at something from the corner of his eye. Tae-ho activated his military scanner array. The modifications he had made showed energy readings that the standard sensors missed. The patterns were not just decoration, they were conduits, channels for some kind of energy that still flowed through the ancient metal. After 10 millennia, this ship still had power. Computer, any signs of atmosphere inside the derelict? Scanning internal structure. Multiple breaches in outer hull sections. Atmosphere detected in central core areas. Composition is nitrogen-oxygen mix, suitable for human life support. Temperature readings indicate internal heating systems are partially functional. Tae-ho made his decision. Standard salvage protocol said to call for backup when dealing with unknown alien technology, but backup took time. Time meant other salvage crews might arrive. Time meant government intervention. Time meant losing the find of a lifetime. He guided the New Seoul closer to the ancient vessel. The ship's docking clamps found purchase on what looked like an airlock. The seal held despite the age of the alien metal. Tae-ho suited up, checking each piece of equipment twice. His marine training had taught him that carelessness in space meant death. The airlock cycled with a sound like distant thunder. Ancient. Mechanisms ground to life after centuries of silence. The inner door opened to reveal a corridor that stretched into darkness. Tejo activated his helmet lights and stepped inside. The corridor was tall, built for beings larger than humans. The walls showed the same geometric patterns as the exterior hull. Up close, Tejo could see they were not carved or painted. They seemed to be part of the metal itself. Grown rather than made, his footsteps echoed strangely in the alien air. The atmosphere was stale but breathable. Dust motes danced in his. Light beams, but it was not the dust of decay. It was the dust of abandonment. As if the crew had simply vanished one day, leaving everything behind. Tejo moved deeper into the ship. His scanner showed multiple levels below his current position. The energy readings grew stronger as he descended. Whatever powered this ancient vessel, it was concentrated in the lower sections. He found what had once been living quarters. Furniture sized for tall, thin beings. Surfaces covered with more of the flowing patterns. Personal items that might have been tools or decorations. Everything was preserved in the dry, cold air, but no bodies. No bones, no sign of what had happened to the crew. The energy readings pulled him deeper, down maintenance shafts and through chambers filled with technology he could not begin to understand, crystals that hummed with power, metal that seemed to flow like liquid while remaining solid, lights that followed his movements without any visible sensors. Finally, he reached the lowest accessible level. Here, the energy readings were strongest. Here, something waited behind a wall covered in the most complex patterns he had yet seen. The design seemed to move and shift, forming shapes that almost looked familiar before dissolving into something else. Tejo placed his gloved hand against the wall. The patterns pulsed brighter. Something responded to his touch. Something that had been waiting in the darkness for 10,000 years. The wall began to open. The wall split apart like water. Ancient mechanisms whispered to life after 10,000 years of silence. Tejo stepped back as sections of the geometric patterns folded into themselves. Cool air rushed out from the hidden chamber beyond. His helmet sensors detected traces of gases he had never encountered before. Behind the opening wall lay darkness deeper than space itself. Tejo's lights could not penetrate more than a few meters into the chamber. He activated his emergency beacon and recorded a message to be transmitted automatically if he failed to return to his ship within 12 hours. This is Kim Tejo, Salvage Operator License 7749. I have discovered what appears to be an alien vessel of unknown origin. Age estimated at over 10,000 years. I'm about to enter a sealed chamber in the lower levels. If you receive this message, contact the Terran Research Consortium immediately. He stepped through the opening. The chamber was vast. His footsteps echoed in spaces larger than aircraft hangars. Crystalline structures rose from the floor like frozen trees. Each crystal pulsed with faint light that seemed to respond to his presence. The geometric patterns from the walls continued here, flowing across the floor and ceiling in designs that made his head ache. Tejo spent 3 hours exploring the chamber. He found more mysteries than answers. The crystals contained some kind of energy that his scanners could not identify. The patterns seemed to be mathematical formulas, but for calculations beyond human understanding. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform covered in symbols that glowed brighter as he approached. When he finally returned to his ship, Tejo faced a decision. This discovery was too important for one person, too dangerous. His military training told him to report to the colonial fleet, but his salvage instincts wanted to keep the fine secret. In the end, scientific curiosity won. He transmitted his findings to the Terran Research Consortium. Dr. Lee So-young arrived 4 days later aboard the research vessel. Morning Star, she brought with her a team of 3 specialists and enough equipment to study the alien ship properly. Tejo watched her shuttle dock with his vessel and wondered if he had made the right choice. So-young was younger than he had expected. Maybe 30 years old, with the intense eyes of someone who had spent her life studying things others could not understand. She wore the blue uniform of the research consortium with the silver badge of as an archaeologist. "Mr. Kim," she said as she boarded the new Soul, "your transmission has caused quite a stir at the consortium. A ship over 10,000 years old. With active technology, we have never found anything like it." Taeho led her to the bridge and showed her the scans of the alien vessel. So Young studied the data with growing excitement. Her fingers traced the geometric patterns on his display screen. "These symbols," she said, "they are not random decoration. Look at the mathematical relationships. The way the angles connect. This is a language, but not like any we have encountered before." The research team spent the first day making detailed scans of the alien ship's exterior. Dr. Park Ji-woo, the team's technology specialist, focused on the energy readings. Dr. Yoon Soo-jin studied the hull composition. Graduate student Lee Kyung-ho documented everything with high-resolution cameras. On the second day, they entered the ship itself. So-young moved through the corridors like someone reading a fascinating book. She stopped at each wall pattern, taking measurements and making notes. Her portable computer analyzed the symbols and tried to find patterns. "The beings who built this ship were tall," she said, examining the ceiling height. "At least 2.5 meters. Thin build based on the furniture dimensions, but look at this." She pointed to groove marks in the metal floors. "These are wear patterns. This ship was used for a long time before it was abandoned." Park Gu-woo was more interested in the technology. He ran scanners over every surface, trying to understand how the ancient system still functioned. "The power source is completely unknown," he reported. "It is not fusion, not antimatter, not any form of energy we recognize. But it is stable and seems to be self-sustaining." They reached the hidden chamber on the third day. So-young stood at the entrance for a long time, staring at the patterns that had opened for Taeho. Her face showed a mixture of excitement and fear. "These symbols are more complex than anything else on the ship," she said. "They are not just language. They are instructions, warnings, perhaps, or invitations." Inside the chamber, the research team spread out to study different areas. So-young focused on the central platform. Park examined the crystalline structures. Yoon took samples of the strange gases that drifted through the air like visible perfume. It was Park who first experienced the visions. He was scanning one of the larger crystals when his legs suddenly gave out. He fell to his knees, his scanner clattering across the floor. His eyes rolled back and he began to speak in a voice that was not his own. "The Watchers sleep but do not rest. The Watchers dream but do not forget. The small ones grow strong while the Watchers wait. The time of choosing approaches." Taeho and So-young rushed to help him. Park's body was rigid, his muscles locked. But after a few minutes, he collapsed completely. When he woke, he remembered nothing of what had happened. "I was looking at the crystal," Park said weakly. "Then I was somewhere else, a place of great machines and beings of light. They were watching something, studying it, but I could not see." What held their attention? So-young ran medical scans on Park. He appeared to be unharmed, but his brain activity showed unusual patterns. Similar to the energy signatures from the crystals. "The chamber is affecting our neural activity," she concluded. "The crystals are not just storing energy. They are storing information, memories perhaps, or experiences." That night, as the team rested aboard the Morning Star, So-young shared her preliminary findings with Taeho. They sat in the research ship's small galley, drinking coffee and trying to make sense of what they had discovered. "This ship is not just ancient," So-young said. "It is a time capsule. The beings who built it wanted to preserve something. Knowledge, maybe, or a warning. A warning about what?" Taeho asked. So-young looked out at the alien ship floating in the darkness beyond their viewport. "I think we are about to find out." The next morning, they discovered that the patterns in the chamber had changed during the night. The changed patterns covered the chamber walls like a living story. Where, before the geometric shapes had been random, now they formed clear sequences. So Young traced the new symbols with her finger, her eyes wide with amazement. "It is responding." "To us," she whispered. "The chamber is trying to communicate." Teho studied the patterns through his helmet display. His military scanner picked up energy fluctuations that matched human brainwaves. "It is reading our minds somehow." "Learning from us?" Park Ji-woo kept his distance from the crystals after his experience the day before. But he continued scanning the chamber from a safe range. "The power levels have increased by 30% since yesterday. Something is waking up." They worked for hours trying to understand the new patterns. So Young's computer analyzed thousands of symbol combinations. Slowly, a translation began to emerge. Single words at first, then phrases. Finally complete. Thoughts written in flowing alien script. "We are the first builders, we are the watchers, we have waited." The message was simple, but its implications were enormous. So Young felt her hands shake as she read the translation aloud. These beings had been waiting. For 10,000 years they had been waiting. Waiting for what? Teho asked. The answer came from the crystals themselves. New patterns flowed across the walls. The translation appeared on So Young's screen word by word. "We have waited for the young ones, the chaotic ones. The ones who fight with beautiful violence." Teho's blood went cold. Beautiful violence. That phrase described humanity better than any textbook. Humans were the only species in the galaxy that fought with both honor and brutality. That created art from war and war from art. More messages appeared. The story of the first builders unfolded in glowing symbols that hurt to look at directly. They had been an ancient civilization that spanned multiple galaxies. Masters of technology. That seemed like magic. But they had been observers, not fighters, watchers, not warriors. They studied other species, So Young translated. They watched civilizations rise and fall. They recorded everything but never interfered. Until something changed their minds. The central platform began to descend into the floor. Hidden mechanisms that had waited for millennia finally activated. Below the platform, a new chamber was revealed. This one was smaller but filled with a different kind of crystal. These were not energy storage devices. They were preservation units. Inside the crystal containers lay the bodies of the first builders. Teho had seen many dead things in his years as a soldier and salvager. But these beings filled him with awe rather than fear. They were tall and graceful even in death. Their limbs were longer than human proportions but perfectly balanced. Their heads were larger, with high foreheads that spoke of great intelligence, but it was their faces that captured his attention. They looked peaceful, almost human in their serenity, as if they had chosen to sleep rather than die. "It is a tomb," So Young breathed. "The entire chamber is a tomb. They preserve themselves here." More symbols flowed across the walls. The story continued. The first builders had encountered something that terrified them. An ancient enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations. Something they called the Silence. "The silence consumes order," So Young read. "It turns complexity into simplicity, life into death." It had destroyed 1,000 worlds before we found a way to stop it temporarily. But our solution was not permanent. It was only a delay. Park found his voice despite his fear. What was their solution? The answer made the crystals pulse brighter. Star charts appeared on the walls. Maps of the galaxy showing dozens of marked systems. At the center of the charts was a small blue-green world that Teho recognized immediately. Earth. They found. "US," Teho said quietly. 10,000 years ago, they found Earth. The symbols told the rest of the story. The first builders had studied early humans. They had watched as primitive tribes fought with stone tools and fire. They had seen something in humanity that no other species possessed. The ability to create order from chaos and chaos from order. The willingness to fight impossible battles and somehow win. "They chose us," So Young whispered. "They chose humanity to be their successors." But the first builders had made one crucial mistake. They had tried to prepare humanity by leaving subtle guidance, teaching them through dreams and visions, trying to shape human development from a distance. What they had not understood was that humanity's strength came from its unpredictability. Their interference had nearly ruined everything. The young ones must find their own path, the latest message read. They must discover their strength through struggle. We can only provide the tools. They must choose how to use them. The tomb contained more than bodies. Hidden compartments opened to reveal technology beyond human understanding. Weapons that responded to thought. Shields that bent space itself. Ships that could cross galaxies in heartbeats, but it was the final message. That changed everything. The silence returns. It has learned patience from watching us. It comes not as a storm, but as a whisper. It will arrive when the young ones are ready. When they have grown strong enough to succeed where we failed. The countdown has begun. A new display appeared in the center of the tomb. Numbers that counted down in base-10 mathematics that any human could understand. 18 months, 14 days, 6 hours, and 37 minutes. The silence was coming. Tejo's military training kicked in automatically. We need to contact Colonial Command immediately. If this is accurate, we need to prepare defenses. But So Young was staring at another section of the tomb. Look at this, there are more sites. Dozens of them scattered across human space. Each one contains part of the first builder's legacy. Their knowledge, their weapons, their final gift to humanity. The implications were staggering. Humanity had been chosen by an ancient civilization to inherit their technology and their enemy. The first builders had been preparing for this moment for 10 millennia. Now it was humanity's turn to prove worthy of their faith. A new sound filled the tomb. Deep and resonant, like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. The preservation crystals were warming. After 10,000 years of death, the first builders were beginning to stir. Not to return to life, but to share their final memories with the species they had chosen to replace them. The real test was about to begin. Commander Choi Min-ho arrived with a full colonial fleet battle group 3 days after Tejo sent his emergency transmission. The veteran officer had served alongside Tejo during the Centauri conflicts. He was one of the few people Tejo trusted completely. Min-ho's flagship, the destroyer Soul's Pride, took position near the alien vessel. 6 escort ships formed a protective perimeter while specialists transferred to the research site. The commander himself joined the away team, his weathered face grim with concern. Tejo, Min-ho said as they met in the tomb chamber. Your report mentions a countdown to invasion. Fleet Command is taking this very seriously. The tomb had changed again overnight. New sections had opened, revealing more preservation crystals and advanced technology. But the most important discovery was a series of data cores that contained the complete history of the First Builders' War against the Silence. Dr. Yoon Harin, the colonial fleet's best cryptolinguist, worked with So Young to decode the alien records. Harin was a small woman with sharp eyes who had broken 17 different alien languages during her career. She approached the first builder symbols like a puzzle that refused to be solved. The mathematical base is consistent, Harin reported, after hours of analysis, but the conceptual framework is completely alien. They think in patterns we barely recognize as thought. The data cores told a story of cosmic horror. The Silence was not a single entity, but a collective intelligence that consumed entire civilizations. It did not destroy worlds through violence, but through perfect order. It turned chaos into mathematical precision until nothing remained but empty equations. Look at these battle records, Min-ho said, studying the translated reports. Every species that fought the Silence used logical tactics, organized battle formations, strategic planning based on predictable patterns. They all failed. The first builders had been masters of order themselves. Their technology was perfect. Their strategies were flawless. Their calculations were exact. But perfection was exactly what the Silence fed upon. The more organized the resistance, the easier it was for the Silence to predict and counter. They realized too late, So Young said, their greatest strength. was their greatest weakness. Order could not defeat order. Logic could not overcome logic. The first builders' final battles were desperate attempts to break their own patterns. They tried random tactics, chaotic strategies, but their minds could not truly embrace disorder. They were too perfect to be unpredictable. That was when they found humanity. The young species fights without rules, Harin translated from the alien records. They create victory from certain defeat. They find patterns in chaos and chaos in patterns. They are the weapon we could never become. The data cores contain detailed studies of human warfare throughout history. The first builders had watched every major battle, every impossible victory, every moment when humans had won against overwhelming odds through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. They documented everything, Minho said with amazement. From ancient Rome to the Centauri conflicts, they saw something in human tactics that even we don't recognize. What the first builders had seen was humanity's gift for organized chaos. Human military formations looked random to alien observers but contained hidden patterns that emerged only in battle. Human strategies seemed contradictory but somehow worked when they should have failed. We improvise, Tejo said simply. Other species plan, we adapt. The tomb revealed its greatest treasure in the deepest chamber, weapons and technology designed specifically for human minds. The first builders had spent centuries creating tools that would respond to human thought patterns rather than logical commands. The weapons were beautiful and terrible. Energy rifles that fired in patterns matching the user's heartbeat. Armor that adapted to protect whatever the wearer feared most. Ships that flew by intuition rather than navigation. This technology requires chaos to function, Harin explained. It draws power from uncertainty. The more unpredictable the user, the more effective the weapon becomes. But the most important revelation came from the first builder's final message. The silence had learned from its previous defeats. It was no longer the purely logical entity that had destroyed 1,000 civilizations. It had adapted. It had become something that could think like its enemies. The silence now carries chaos within its order, the alien text warned. It has learned to be unpredictable. It will use our own gifts against us. The young ones must become more than chaotic. They must become creative. Minho understood immediately. It is not enough to be random. We need to be inventive. To create new forms of chaos it has never seen. The countdown showed 17 months remaining. Across human space, other first builder sites were awakening. Each one contained different aspects of the alien legacy, weapons, ships, knowledge, but also tests designed to determine if humanity was truly ready. We are not just inheriting their technology, So Young realized. We are inheriting their responsibility. If we fail, the silence will consume everything. The tomb's final chamber contained something unexpected. Personal belongings of the first builders. Art that showed their homeworlds. Music preserved in crystalline form. Stories of their civilization's greatest achievements. They had been people, not gods, individuals with hopes and fears and dreams. They had chosen to die rather than see their enemy victorious. But they had also chosen to believe that another species could succeed where they had failed. They had faith in us, Tejo sighed quietly. 10,000 years of faith. As the colonial fleet prepared to transport the first builder technology back to Earth, the tomb began its final transformation. The preservation crystals dimmed as the ancient beings finally found peace. Their long vigil was over. Humanity would carry their burden now, but in the darkness between the stars, sensors detected movement. The silence had felt the awakening of the first builder sites. It knew its ancient enemies' heirs had finally claimed their inheritance. The war was about to begin. General Nam Dong-wook stood in the war room of Colonial Command, staring at a holographic map of human space. Red dots marked the locations of 43 first builder sites that had awakened across the galaxy. Each site contained part of the alien legacy. Each site also contained tests that humanity had to pass. 17 sites have been successfully activated, reported his aide, Colonel Park Seung-min. 12 have rejected human contact entirely. The remaining 14 are still being evaluated. Tejo led the team responsible for activating the sites. His experience with the original tomb made him uniquely qualified to interface with First Builder technology. But each site presented new challenges that tested different aspects of human nature. The site on Kepler 438b had required pure courage. The test chamber filled with illusions of humanity's greatest fears. Only those who could act despite overwhelming terror could claim the weapons stored there. Tejo had walked through visions of the Centauri War's worst battles to reach the ancient armory. The Proxima Centauri site demanded creativity. The First Builder technology there would only activate for humans who could solve problems in ways the aliens had never considered. Dr. So Young had spent weeks learning to think in patterns that hurt her brain, but the result was access to shield technology that protected entire star systems. The aliens were testing us all along, So Young reported from the Proxima site. Every challenge is designed to bring out uniquely human traits. They wanted to be sure we were ready. But ready for what became clear when deep space monitors detected the first silence probes entering the outer rim systems. The enemy scouts were nothing like the First Builder records had described. Where the ancient silence had been purely mechanical, these new entities showed signs of evolution. They moved in patterns that seemed random but contained hidden structure. They adapted to human tactics almost instantly. It learned, General Nam said grimly. The silence studied the First Builder's defeat. It knows what we are capable of. The first battle took place in the Vega system. A colonial fleet patrol encountered 3 silence probes near the outer planets. The human ships used standard military tactics, formation flying, coordinated attacks, logical strategies. They were destroyed in minutes. The silence probes analyzed every human move and countered perfectly. They turned the fleet's organization against itself. They used human predictability as a weapon. We need to change everything, Admiral Kim Young-soo reported from the surviving ship. Every manual, every training program, every assumption about how space combat works. Tejo volunteered to lead the first mission using pure First Builder technology. His ship was rebuilt with alien weapons that responded to emotion rather than logic. His crew was trained to fight by instinct rather than procedure. The test came at Volf 359. Where a full silence battle group had established itself around the system's star. 10 enemy ships that moved like a single organism. Perfect coordination. Flawless execution. Tejo's small squadron approached without any battle plan at all. We improvise, he told his pilots. We react. We do whatever feels right in the moment. No coordination, no formations. Every ship fights its own battle. The engagement lasted 4 hours. Tejo's squadron should have been annihilated in the first few minutes. Instead, the silence found itself facing tactics it could not predict or counter. Human ships that attacked from impossible angles. Weapons that fired in patterns that made no sense. Strategies that changed every few seconds. The silence adapted, but not fast enough. By the time it learned to counter one human tactic, Tejo's pilots had moved on to something completely different. We won, Tejo reported, his voice filled with amazement. We actually won, but the victory came at a cost. 3 of his pilots had mental breakdowns from using First Builder weapons. The alien technology demanded more creativity than human minds were designed to handle. Prolonged use caused hallucinations, memory loss, and in extreme cases, complete personality changes. Dr. Harin studied the effects on Tejo's crew. The weapons are trying to enhance human unpredictability, she concluded. But they are pushing our brains beyond safe limits. We can use this technology, but not for long periods. Meanwhile, more silence forces entered human space. They had learned from the defeat at Volf 359. Their new tactics incorporated elements of chaos theory. They fought with organized randomness that mimicked human unpredictability while maintaining their core efficiency. It is evolving faster than we are, General Nam admitted during a strategy meeting. Every battle teaches it something new about us. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Park Ji-woo, the researcher who had experienced visions in the original tomb, began showing signs of permanent change. The first builder crystals had altered his brain structure. He could now interface directly with alien technology without suffering the usual side effects. "I can see the patterns," Ji-woo explained, his eyes glowing with faint energy. "The silence thinks it understands chaos, but it only understands the mathematics of chaos. It does not understand the spirit." Ji-woo's enhanced abilities allowed him to unlock the deepest secrets of the first builder sites, hidden chambers that contained the aliens' final weapons. Technology that had never been tested because the first builders had died before they could use it. "They built these for us specifically," Ji-woo said. "Weapons that require human souls to function. The silence can copy our tactics and our strategies, but it cannot copy what makes us human." The final preparations began as the countdown reached 60 days. Across human space, volunteers underwent dangerous procedures to interface with first builder technology. Military units trained in tactics that violated every rule of warfare. Scientists worked to understand weapons that operated on principles beyond physics. But the most important discovery came from the original tomb. So Young found records of the first builders' final days. Their last desperate attempt to create a weapon the silence could never counter. "They tried to become like us," she reported. "They modified their own genetics to be more human. They wanted to think chaotically, but it was too late. They were too ordered in their core nature." The records showed the first builders' ultimate sacrifice. They had chosen to die rather than let their ordered minds contaminate the chaos they saw in humanity. They had preserved themselves not to return to life, but to ensure their knowledge survived long enough to be inherited. "They believed in us more than they believed in themselves," Taeho said. As the countdown reached 30 days, long-range sensors detected the main silence fleet. Thousands of ships moving in formations that hurt to look at. Perfect order wrapped around mathematical chaos. The enemy had become everything the first builders had feared, but humanity was ready with something the universe had never seen. Organized chaos powered by creativity itself. The final battle would determine not just the survival of human civilization, but the future of free will in the galaxy. The test was about to begin. The Silence Fleet filled space like a living mathematical equation. 3,000 ships arranged in patterns that followed no natural law but possessed perfect internal logic. They moved as one organism, each vessel a cell in a vast intelligence that had consumed galaxies. General Nam watched the enemy approach from the command center on Luna Base. Every screen showed the same terrible beauty. Ships that looked like crystallized music. Formations that resembled frozen fire. The silence had become art, but art without soul. "All human fleets report ready," Colonel Park announced. 237 ships across 17 battle groups. Every vessel equipped with first builder technology. The human fleet looked chaotic by comparison. Ships of different sizes and designs scattered across multiple star systems. No unified command structure, no coordinated battle plan. Each captain had been given one simple order: fight like a human. Taeho commanded the lead squadron from his rebuilt ship, New Seoul. The vessel barely resembled its original salvage configuration. First builder weapons covered its hull like living metal. The bridge instruments responded to his emotions rather than his commands. His crew of 12 included 3 volunteers who had undergone the same neural modifications as Park Ji-woo. "Remember," Taeho transmitted to all human forces, "we do not fight to win, we fight to survive. And humans are very good at surviving." The first engagement began near Jupiter's moons. A silence probe group encountered Captain Lee Hai-jin's destroyer squadron. Instead of attacking directly, Hai-jin ordered her ships to scatter in all directions. The silence vessels followed, trying to maintain their perfect formation while pursuing multiple targets. That was when Hai-jin revealed her true strategy. Her ships had been dropping mines during their retreat. Not in any pattern the silence could detect, but in locations that felt right to human intuition. When the enemy vessels reached the minefield, they found explosives arranged in ways that made no mathematical sense, but somehow worked perfectly. The Silence lost 6 ships before they could adapt. But they did adapt faster than any organic mind could process. Within minutes, they had learned to detect and avoid human intuition-based tactics. The battle spread across the solar system. At Mars, Commander Yun Tae-young used asteroid miners as weapons, turning industrial equipment into improvised warships. Near Saturn, Admiral Park So-min commanded her fleet through music, using rhythm and melody to coordinate attacks that followed artistic rather than military logic. Each human victory taught the Silence something new. Each defeat forced humanity to become more creative. The war became a spiral of innovation versus adaptation, with both sides evolving faster than should have been possible. The turning point came when the Silence made its crucial mistake. It tried to be human. Dr. Harin detected the change first. "The enemy fleet is beginning to use truly random tactics," she reported from her analysis station on Earth. "Not organized chaos. Pure randomness. They think they have learned our secret." But randomness was not humanity's strength, creativity was. The Silence could copy chaos, but it could not copy imagination. It could mimic unpredictability, but it could not mimic the spark of inspiration that turned impossible situations into unlikely victories. Tae-ho saw the opportunity during the battle for Earth's moon. His squadron was surrounded by Silence vessels that had learned to fight unpredictably. They attacked from random angles using chaotic tactics. By all logic, the human ships should have been overwhelmed. Instead, Tae-ho did something no tactical manual had ever suggested. He surrendered. "All human ships, this is New Seoul. We surrender unconditionally. Please do not destroy us." The Silence fleet stopped. For the first time in the battle, their perfect coordination wavered. Surrender was not random, it was not chaotic. It was a choice that made no tactical sense but perfect human sense. While the Silence tried to process this impossible decision, Tae-ho activated every first builder weapon simultaneously. The resulting explosion destroyed half the enemy fleet and crippled the rest. The Silence had been so focused on analyzing human surrender that they had forgotten to maintain their defenses across the solar system. Other human commanders copied Tae-ho's innovation, not his exact tactic but his spirit. They made choices that were neither logical nor random but purely creative. They turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength by embracing it completely. Captain Kim Min-kyung rammed her damaged cruiser into a Silence command ship while broadcasting poetry over all frequencies. Commander Lee Jae-woo used his ship's navigation system to paint pictures in space, creating art that confused enemy targeting systems. Admiral Choi Young-ho ordered his entire fleet to dance, using ballet movements to coordinate attacks that the Silence could neither predict nor counter. The Silence began to retreat. Not because they were losing, but because they could not understand what they were fighting. Every time they adapted to human tactics, humans created new tactics. Every time they learned from human creativity, humans became more creative. "They are running," General Nam announced with amazement. "The Silence is actually running away." But the retreat was not a victory, it was a recognition. The Silence had finally understood what the first builders had seen in humanity 10,000 years ago. Humans were not just chaotic, they were not just creative. They were infinitely adaptive. They could become whatever they needed to become to survive. The Silence could not defeat that. It could only acknowledge it and withdraw to find easier prey among the more predictable species of distant galaxies. In the aftermath of the battle, humanity counted the cost. 37 ships lost, over 2,000 casualties. But they had won something more valuable than victory. They had proven themselves worthy of the first builder's faith. The alien tombs across human space began their final transformation. The preservation crystals holding the ancient beings dissolved, releasing their occupants to the peace they had earned. Their long watch was over. Their chosen successors had passed the test. Tae-ho returned to the original tomb one last time. The chamber was empty now except for a single message glowing on the central platform. Haran translated the final words of the first builders. "The young ones have become what we could never be." They are the bridge between order and chaos, between logic and madness, between death and life. The galaxy is safe in their hands. The tomb went dark. The first builder's legacy lived on in human hands and human hearts. But the ancient race itself was finally at rest. Tejo returned to his salvage work, but with a difference. The galaxy was full of wonders waiting to be discovered, and humanity had proven itself ready to face whatever lay hidden in the darkness between stars. The age of human expansion had truly begun.